Invoice Synchronization to Rent Manager. Keep in mind, in Rent Manager, there are different words used for the different software. For example, a work order in PM Toolbelt is called a service issue in Rent Manager. An invoice in PM Toolbelt is called a work order in Rent Manager. A price book category in PM Toolbelt is called an item in Rent Manager. Let's show you how the syncing works with our software. If I were to select Maintain and then go into my work orders, now I have a work order that I have invoiced in PM Toolbelt. This means it will appear as a work order in Rent Manager. If I wanted to view my invoice, you will see at the top of the page to sync Rent Manager. Every time you invoice a work order in PM Toolbelt, you need to press the Sync Rent Manager button to have that invoice sync over. This is the only time where the automatic syncing does not happen. Keep in mind, we automatically sync with Rent Manager for all other categories such as properties, tenants, units, etc. every 15 minutes. Now that we have generated the invoice, let's sync this over to Rent Manager. You see a notification showed up that it was synced over to Rent Manager. Let's see what this looks like within Rent Manager. In the upper right-hand corner, put in the invoice number and select Global. Here is how the work order appears in Rent Manager. Again, remember that a work order is called a service issue within Rent Manager. If I were to scroll down and move to the right-hand side, you will see the owner bill is automatically checked off because we have invoiced the work order and we synced to Rent Manager. At the bottom, you will find all the contact information about this work order, including the emails that were sent out, the statuses of the vendor, and then at the very bottom of the page, you will see attached is our invoice. Within the service issue of Rent Manager, you can also check your inventory. If you set up price book categories with PM Toolbelt, this will be considered an inventory item in Rent Manager. For this work order, we replaced old countertops with new granite, and then we used paint to clean up the back wall of the countertop, as you see in the work order details. For paint, we used one quantity. So if I were to go into my inventory items in Rent Manager, you will see on the left-hand side all my items. So this would show up in PM Toolbelt as price book categories. If I were to select paint you will see in Rent Manager that paint has the color blue, which is a trackable item that is recommended to reorder. If I select paint, you'll see that we are tracking the inventory. And if I were to check my inventory transactions, you will see our work order automatically synced with Rent Manager and deducted the inventory quantity in Rent Manager. I used 1 gallon of paint for my work order. You'll see the price was listed, and you'll see the remaining quantity. We originally had 50, and now we have 49 because this work order used 1 gallon of paint. And that is how you track inventory items in Rent Manager. Now, when you are syncing with Rent Manager with one of your external vendors, it's going to sync a little differently. This work order was scheduled out to Acme Repair, my external vendor. After Acme Repair completed the work order, they received an email asking them to attach their own invoice. Once they attach their invoice to that email, if I scroll to the bottom of my work order, you will see the invoice will automatically attach to the bottom of the work order. Now that we have generated our invoice, let's sync to Rent Manager. As you can see, we got an icon in the upper right-hand corner that our invoice synced to Rent Manager. Let's show you what Rent Manager looks like for an external vendor. If I were to search in the upper right-hand corner my work order number and select Global, you will see my work order appeared. Now, when I am in the service issue, you will see the bill automatically checked for the vendor and for the owner. That is the primary difference between Rent Manager using an external vendor versus an internal vendor. An external vendor will always check the box for the vendor bill. And that is how you synchronize an invoice to Rent Manager.